One battle after another is a film I genuinely did not expect. Seeing Paul Thomas Anderson team up with Leonardo DiCaprio already set my expectations high, but I assumed we'd be getting something along the lines of Phantom Thread or There Will Be Blood, slow burn tension, dense character work, melancholic atmosphere. Instead, Anderson arrives with something totally different, a full-blown action thriller with political bite, social relevance and some shocking thematic darkness. This is Anderson operating outside his usual playground, and the result is one of the boldest films he's made in years. The film feels eerily relevant to the modern political climate, especially in the United States. The story revolves around a left-wing militia group known as the French 75, who present themselves as freedom fighters, resisting oppressive governmental structures, but their tactics blur the lines between rebellion and terrorism. On the opposite extreme stands the right-wing authoritarian establishment led by Colonel Steve Lockjaw, played by a ferocious, career-based Sean Penn, who embodies an icy, racist, militaristic worldview, not to mention a strange walk. Anderson uses these characters not to take sides, but to show that extremism mirrors itself. Both groups believe they're fighting for freedom, both are driven by adrenaline, ideology and personal trauma, and both inflict suffering on the people caught in between them. This balance gives the film its political punch. It's less about left versus right, and more about how extremism perpetuates cycles of violence, regardless of philosophy. DiCaprio once again disappears into character, this time as a washed-up explosives expert, now paranoid, drug-addicted and terrified after being found by the military unit he once portrayed. He's desperately trying to raise his daughter Willa, but he's drowning in trauma, paranoia and guilt. It's one of his most internal performances in years, jittery, unhinged, and quite heartbreaking. Teyana Taylor here as Perfidia Beverly Hills is a revelation. She plays the charismatic but dangerously uncompromising leader of the French 75. Though her screen time is limited after the first act, she leaves a lasting impression, seductive, ideological, and morally impenetrable. The chemistry with Penn's Lockjaw is electric and disturbing, especially as their psychological rivalry becomes laced with sexual tension. As I mentioned earlier, Penn is absolutely terrifying. This might be one of his most chilling portrayals of authoritarianism in recent cinema. Lockjaw's racist ideology, military rigidity, and simmering resentment should make him repellent, yet Penn layers him with strange vulnerability and attraction towards Perfidia that exposes the hypocrisy of his worldview. He and Teyana Taylor truly feel like two sides of the same coin, extremists masquerading as saviors. Chase Infiniti here plays Willa Ferguson, and this is a breakout performance. Willa begins the film as a naive teen raised in fear and hiding, but she evolves into a complex, conflicted character grappling with identity, loyalty, and survival. Her arc is one of the film's most compelling emotional threads as she learns the truth about her parents. A small but memorable role here is played by Benicio del Toro. He's a martial arts instructor who quietly aids the underground resistance. He brings understated gravitas to every scene, as only del Toro can, in his very laid-back manner. Now, the film's central narrative revolves around survival, identity, and the blurred moral lines of political violence. Paul Thomas Anderson deliberately avoids clean heroes or villains. The French 75 believe they are liberators. They use bombings, kidnappings, and civilian manipulation. Lockjaw's government claims to protect national security, but employs racism, profiling, and paramilitary brutality. Paul Thomas Anderson seems to argue that radical ends never justify radical means. People become what they fight against, and violence creates a cycle where no one truly wins. This is reinforced through twisted connection between Lockjaw and Perfidia, reflections of each other's obsession with power and control. Thematically, the film also touches on themes of governmental overreach, immigrant detainment, a clear echo of the ICE detention centers, racial tensions, generational trauma, and the cost of ideological purity. Despite its heavy subject matter, Paul Thomas Anderson injects moments of dark humor, human vulnerability, and even a surreal warmth, classic trademarks of his incredible filmmaking skill. Visually, the film is stunning. Paul Thomas Anderson teams again with cinematographer Michael Bauman, and the film has a gritty texture reminiscent of Sicario, blended with the color palette of Inherent Vice. Dusty browns, sickly yellows, neon reds, a visual metaphor for the ideological decay of the world. The action is surprisingly kinetic for Paul Thomas Anderson, handheld chaos, long tracking shots, and explosive set scenes. Not to mention the fantastic car chase scene at the end of the film, where you literally feel like you're on board as the characters drive through the rolling streets in the desert background. It's thrilling, nauseating, yet incredibly impactful. The score by Johnny Greenwood is once again brilliant, unsettling strings mixed with industrial percussion, giving the movie a constant sense of unease. Here's a few fascinating pieces of production trivia. Paul Thomas Anderson reportedly spent several years developing the script, originally inspired by reading about Cold War militant groups. The film's original working title was The Rocket Man. referencing DiCaprio's character. Many action sequences were shot practically, including the underground bunker explosion. Sean Penn and Teyana Taylor rehearsed their major confrontation scenes with the real psychologist present to help them unpack the character's ideological obsession and sexual tension. Leonardo DiCaprio improvised several paranoid monologues. Paul Thomas Anderson encouraged it to capture the frantic mental state of his character. Chase Infiniti trained for 6 months with a self-defense specialist to make Willer's physical evolution believable. Now, this is the kind of film that will polarize audiences, but will also captivate award voters. And if there's one minor gripe I have with the film, is its runtime. At 162 minutes, it may be a barrier for some viewers. And maybe it could have been edited down somewhat. But there's no denying this is an incredibly bold, human interest story that relies on political sharpness and has a strong and unique message, making this film truly unforgettable. One Battle After Another gets a 9 out of 10. This is a daring, complex and ambitious political thriller that shows Paul Thomas Anderson at his most inventive and DiCaprio at his most vulnerable. So what did you think of One Battle After Another? Let me know down in the comments, and please don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dive reviews.